You ever have a roommate who just kind of slips into your life like background noise? Harmless, steady, unremarkable, until one day they're all you can think about? That was Dylan. When he first moved in, I didn't think much of it. We were both seniors at the same university, just trying to get through our final semester without losing our minds. Dylan needed a room, I needed help with rent. Easy. He was chill, kind of scruffy, with that quiet confidence some guys have without even trying. Messy brown hair, sleepy blue eyes, always in old hoodies. The kind of guy who looks like he never overthinks anything. Me? I'm Evan. Organized, caffeinated, allergic to drama. I've had enough roommate disasters to last a lifetime, so I told myself early on, Dylan is off limits. Straight, probably. Hot? Yeah, but not my problem. We settled into a quiet rhythm. We had our own routines. He'd go to class, come home, throw something together in the kitchen while blasting lo-fi beats. I'd be camped out on the couch grading papers or watching reruns of old shows. Occasionally, we'd watch something together. Not planned, just kinda happened. What started to get to me were the small things. Like how he remembered my coffee order without asking, how he always knocked before entering my room, how he started leaving the good snacks on my shelf, even though we never talked about splitting groceries. Stuff like that, it adds up. Still, I didn't think it meant anything. I told myself he was just being nice. Then came the snowstorm. Friday afternoon, a sudden blizzard rolled in, caught everyone off guard. Classes got canceled, roads iced over, and the whole city basically shut down. By evening, our place was glowing warm inside, while the outside looked like something out of a horror movie. I was curled up in the living room under a blanket, trying to grade midterms, when Dylan came out of his room holding a bowl of popcorn and his laptop. "Mind if I hang here?" he asked. "My heater's making weird noises, and I'm pretty sure the power's gonna cut out." I shrugged. "Sure, just don't distract me." He grinned. "Can't promise that." We ended up watching some god-awful sci-fi movie he swore was a classic. We laughed the whole way through. At one point, he leaned over to make some dumb joke and our arms touched, and neither of us moved away. When the movie ended, the apartment was dark except for the flicker from my laptop. I was just about to tell him goodnight when he hesitated. "Hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Weird ask, but do you mind if I crash in your room tonight?" I blinked. "Huh?" "It's just, this storm's messing with my head. I know it's dumb, but I don't feel like sleeping alone tonight." My throat felt dry, but I played it cool. "Yeah, that's fine." We went to my room. I tossed him a pillow and some blankets. I figured he'd take the floor. But he didn't. He climbed into my bed like it was nothing, stayed on his side, didn't make a big deal about it. At first, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside. He didn't say anything, just breathed slow and steady. Eventually, I fell asleep, until around 3 a.m. when I woke up and felt his arm around my waist. And the wildest part? I didn't move. At first, I thought I was dreaming. That half-asleep state where reality blurs and your mind plays tricks on you. I didn't move, didn't even breathe too deep, just stayed perfectly still, letting my senses catch up. His arm was definitely there, firm, resting low around my waist. Not just a casual brush or accidental sprawl. It was deliberate, settled. Like he was comfortable. Like this wasn't new to him. And his chest pressed lightly against my back. Steady, warm, too steady to be an accident, too intentional to ignore. I waited for him to move, to realize what he was doing and roll away, maybe mutter an apology. But he didn't. If anything, he shifted closer. His nose grazed the back of my neck, and I could feel his breath. Soft, calm. I didn't know what the hell to do. My mind was going a mile a minute. This was Dylan, my straight roommate. The guy who still left dishes in the sink and hummed Drake lyrics while cooking quinoa. The same guy who, until a few hours ago, had never given me a reason to think this. And now he was basically spooning me in the middle of the night like it was the most natural thing in the world, I couldn't turn around, I didn't want to startle him, and if I'm honest, I didn't want to risk whatever weird moment this was disappearing too soon. Then, barely above a whisper, I heard him. "You still awake?" I swallowed. "Yeah." A beat passed. His grip on me didn't change. "I didn't mean to be weird," he said quietly. "I just couldn't sleep, and I didn't want to be alone." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see it. "It's okay," he hesitated. "You sure?" I paused before answering. "Yeah, I don't mind." Neither of us said anything after that. We just lay there, still and tense, the silence loud as hell. My heart was beating like crazy, but I tried to stay calm, tried to match his breathing so I wouldn't give away how wrecked I was inside. Eventually, I felt him relax again. His hand moved slightly, fingertips brushing over the hem of my shirt like he was adjusting without thinking. But it felt too careful, too precise. And when his thumb lightly skimmed the skin just above my waistband, I stopped pretending to be calm. I turned slightly, just enough to glance over my shoulder. He looked at me. No smile, no smirk. Just this quiet, unguarded look I'd never seen on him before. His eyes didn't flinch away like they usually did when we made eye contact. We stared at each other in the dim light for what felt like hours. Then he whispered, "Is this okay?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't know what to say. Was it okay? I should have been confused, scared, at least cautious. But I wasn't. I was just tired of pretending. So I nodded. And Dylan closed the distance between us. Slowly. Like he was still giving me time to pull back. I didn't. His lips didn't quite land on mine. Not at first. It was more like he paused right before they could, hovering, testing, waiting for something I wasn't sure I was ready to give. But I didn't stop him. I didn't even blink. I just stayed there, half-turned, watching him try to figure out what this moment meant. And then, finally, he closed that last inch. It was soft, careful, like he was touching something fragile, like he thought I might shatter if he pushed too hard. I'd never kissed someone like that before, someone who tasted like mint and nerves, who was both trembling and solid in the same breath. It lasted maybe 4 seconds. But it wrecked me. When he pulled back, he kept his eyes on mine, searching for some kind of reaction. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely think, but I knew 2 things for sure. I wasn't scared, and I didn't want it to stop. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath all this time. "Sorry," he said, and it wasn't a panicked sorry. It was soft, almost apologetic, but not regretful. I whispered, "Why?" His eyes dropped to my mouth. "I don't know. I guess I've been thinking about this for a while. I just didn't think I'd actually do it." My throat tightened. "You sure you're not just cold and tired and whatever this storm's doing to you?" He smiled faintly, that half-crooked grin I'd seen 100 times before, but it looked different now. Sadder, braver. "I'm sure," he said. "I've been trying to figure it out for weeks." My brain wanted to ask 100 questions. About what this meant, about whether he'd done this before, about what would happen tomorrow, but none of them made it out. Instead, I just shifted a little closer and let my hand rest lightly on his wrist. "Okay," I said. He blinked. "Okay." I nodded. "If you're gonna stay here tonight, you don't have to lie about why." He didn't say anything, just looked at me like I had said something important, more important than I realized. Then he let out this breathy laugh, almost like a sigh of relief, and laid his forehead against mine. We didn't kiss again, not that night. We just stayed there, curled up in the quiet, limbs tangled under the same blanket, like 2 people who were suddenly, irreversibly aware of each other. And in the middle of that snowstorm, with the city frozen and the world outside dead silent, I let myself believe, for the first time in a long time, that maybe something real was starting. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds and the sound of quiet breathing behind me. Dylan was still there. One arm draped across my waist, his face nestled into the back of my shoulder like we hadn't moved all night. For a second, I thought maybe it was some strange dream, too soft, too surreal. But then I felt his breath, slow and warm, and the steady pressure of his chest against my back. It was real, and that made it terrifying. I stayed still, eyes wide open, letting the weight of what had happened settle over me. The kiss. The way he looked at me. The way he didn't run. He chose to stay. After a few minutes, I felt him stir. His hand twitched slightly on my stomach, and then he let out a low groan, the kind people make when they don't want to leave a warm bed. "Morning," he murmured, voice gravelly. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. I didn't turn around. I wasn't ready for whatever expression might be on his face. "You sleep okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. You? Best in a while," he said quietly. We lay there in silence, not quite sure how to navigate the aftermath. I wasn't used to this, waking up beside someone, especially not someone I lived with, especially not someone like Dylan. Eventually, he sat up and swung his legs over the side of the bed. I turned to look at him, and he glanced back at me with a sheepish half-smile. I should probably shower. My brain's not functioning yet. "Right," I said, watching as he rubbed a hand over his face and stood up, stretching slightly. His shirt lifted just enough for me to catch a glimpse of skin, and I hated how instinctive the reaction was. He caught me looking but didn't say anything, just walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused and said, "Hey, I don't regret last night." That froze me. "I'm figuring things out," he added. "So, if I'm weird for a bit, just give me some space, yeah?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "Of course." He nodded and slipped out, leaving the door ajar behind him. I lay there for another 10 minutes, staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my head around it all. What did figuring things out mean? Was he bi? Curious? Lonely? And what did I want from this? Because now I had to live in the same apartment as the guy who kissed me, and I wasn't sure how long I could keep pretending it hadn't changed everything. The days after that were weird. Not bad, not tense, just strange in the kind of way that makes you second-guess every word, every look, every shared silence. Dylan didn't avoid me. In fact, if anything, he was more present, lingering a little longer in the kitchen while I made coffee, hanging around the living room instead of disappearing into his room after class. But there was this unspoken layer between us now, like we were both pretending everything was normal, but couldn't quite forget the truth sitting just under the surface. That we'd kissed, that he'd held me all night, that I hadn't wanted him to stop. It wasn't like we were suddenly touchy or flirty. There were no more late-night cuddles or quiet conversations in the dark. But things had changed, subtly. I started catching him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. And once, when our hands brushed as we reached for the same plate, he didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. Then came Friday night. I was sprawled on the couch with my laptop, half watching some dumb movie and half writing an essay for my Brit-Lit class, when Dylan came in wearing sweats and a faded band tee. His hair was damp, and he smelled like whatever soap he used that always made my brain short-circuit. "Want to order something?" he asked, flopping down on the other end of the couch. "Yeah, whatever's easy." We settled on Thai. He paid. I offered to grab us drinks. As I stood at the fridge, he called out, "Hey, Evie." "Yeah?" He hesitated. "You going out tomorrow night?" "Not planning on it." "Why?" He shrugged. "Just wondering." I came back, handed him a soda, and sat down again. "You got plans?" He didn't answer right away, just sipped his drink and stared at the TV. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "I've never kissed a guy before." I turned to look at him. He was staring at the screen like it was suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. His voice was even, calm, like he was commenting on the weather. "Okay," I said carefully. "I mean," he paused, letting out a small laugh. "I didn't expect it to happen. Not with you. Not that night. But it didn't feel wrong, you know?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I know." He finally looked at me. "Is that weird?" "No." I said. Not to me. A long silence followed. I've been thinking about it, he admitted, trying to figure out if it was just a moment or if it means something more. What do you think it means? He looked down at the can in his hands, turning it slowly. I think it means I want to do it again. That knocked the air out of me. Before I could respond, the door buzzer went off. Our food had arrived. Dylan stood, rubbing the back of his neck. Let's eat, he said, like we hadn't just cracked something wide open between us. But as he walked past me, he let his fingers brush mine, a deliberate, quiet promise. We didn't talk about it again that night. Not directly. We ate on the couch, watching some old comedy series he loved. We laughed, passed the food container back and forth, and pretended like nothing earth-shaking had just been said between us. But I couldn't focus. Not really. Every time Dylan leaned closer to grab something, every time our knees brushed, every time his voice dropped into that softer, more thoughtful register, it felt like my entire nervous system was tuned only to him. And I was scared, not because I didn't want it, but because I really, really did. Around midnight, I stood up to clean up the leftovers, but Dylan took the box from my hands. I got it, he said. You've had a long week. I gave him a look. You sure? Positive. Go get ready for bed or whatever. So I did. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, changed into an old t-shirt and sweats, all while trying to quiet the tornado of thoughts in my head. I half expected him to retreat to his own room when he was done, but he didn't. 10 minutes later, he knocked on my door, just once, and stepped in holding 2 mugs of hot tea. I made chamomile, he said, a little shy, like we hadn't already slept in the same bed. Figured it might help us both sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, taking the mug from him. Thanks. He stayed standing, sipping from his cup, glancing around the room like he was looking for a sign. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. After a long pause, he asked, "Can I stay again?" I blinked. You don't even have the storm excuse this time. He gave a crooked smile. Nope, just want to. I nodded once and scooted over. Dylan placed his mug on my desk and climbed into the bed, this time without hesitation, like it was a habit. And maybe it was becoming one. We didn't touch. Not right away. We lay side by side, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the radiator and the distant city noise outside our window. Then, softly, he said, "Do you ever think about what it would be like?" I turned to him. What? You know, dating a guy, being with a guy, long term. I blinked. Yeah, I have. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I think I'm starting to. My heart was in my throat. Starting? He nodded. With you. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He shifted closer, until his forehead was almost resting against mine. I'm scared shitless, he whispered. But I can't stop thinking about you. And that's when I kissed him. This time, there was no hesitation. No slow build. Just the simple truth of it. My lips on his, my hand finding his jaw, the way he leaned into me like he'd been waiting for permission. He kissed back with so much focus, it nearly undid me. His fingers slid into my hair, his chest rising and falling fast against mine, and the taste of his breath, tea and nerves and something warmer, was suddenly the only thing I wanted. When we finally pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to mine again. I don't know what this is yet, he said, but I don't want to stop. Then don't, I whispered. And he didn't. Waking up next to him felt different this time. Not because we'd kissed again, though we had. Not because we'd fallen asleep tangled together, legs hooked lazily, his arm draped across my chest. No, it was different because when I woke up, he was already awake, and he was watching me. Not in a creepy way, in a quiet, thoughtful, maybe a little scared kind of way. Like he was trying to memorize this, whatever this was, before it slipped away. I blinked up at him. You good? He nodded slowly. Yeah, but he didn't look away. His fingers gently traced the hem of my shirt. barely touching skin. I could tell he was overthinking again. His mind always ran faster than his mouth could keep up. So I asked, "What's going on in that head of yours?" He sighed. "Just trying to figure out what comes next." "You mean with us?" He nodded again. "I don't want to mess this up." I sat up slightly, resting on my elbow. "Then don't." He gave a soft laugh. "It's not that simple." "It can be." Dylan looked at me, his brow furrowed, serious. "I've never dated a guy before, Evan. Like, ever. I don't even know what to tell people. I don't know what I am. And I don't want to pretend like I've got it all figured out." I nodded slowly. "You don't have to. But you deserve someone who has. You know, someone who isn't still trying to decide if he's brave enough to hold your hand in public." That hit me harder than I expected. I sat all the way up and turned to face him fully. "I'd rather have someone who's honest than someone who's perfect. I'm not looking for a finished product, Dylan. I just want you, however messy, confused, or awkward that looks." He looked stunned for a second, like maybe no one had ever told him that before. "I'm not asking you to shout it from the rooftops," I added. "I'm just asking you to show up, here, with me." There was a long silence. Then he exhaled through his nose, almost like he was releasing months of tension all at once. "I can do that," he said. "I want to." A beat passed. Then he grinned. "Also, I really like kissing you." I laughed, probably too loud for 8 a.m., and flopped back on the bed. "Yeah, I hadn't noticed." He dropped down beside me, pulling the blanket over our heads. "Guess I'll have to remind you." We spent most of Saturday in bed. Not just kissing, though there was plenty of that, but just being. Talking, laughing, telling stories we hadn't shared before. We ordered food again, watched old cartoons, and stayed tangled up in each other like the rest of the world had been put on pause. And when the sun went down and we brushed our teeth side by side like we'd done 100 times before, it felt different, intimate in a new way, real. Like something we'd never name out loud, but both of us finally understood. That night, Dylan didn't even hesitate before climbing into bed with me. He just said, "Night, EV." And I said, "Night, Dill." And that was it. We didn't define it. Not right away, anyway. There were no dramatic confessions, no deep Instagram posts, no big talk about what we were or where we were going. It was slower than that, quieter, but somehow more real because of it. Dylan stayed in my bed again the next night, and the night after that, until at some point, we just stopped pretending he had his own room. Mornings became our thing. Half-awake conversations before the sun came up, brushing our teeth in sync, him stealing my hoodies even though he had a dozen of his own. He'd bump into me in the kitchen just to touch me, light fingers on my back, a kiss on the cheek when no one was looking. And I noticed how careful he was. Not guarded, exactly. Just intentional. Like he was testing the weight of this thing between us, with every moment, every touch, every choice not to run. One Friday, about 2 weeks after that first night, we were walking through campus together. It wasn't a date, not officially. We'd just both had late classes and decided to grab coffee before heading home. It was colder than usual, windy. I shoved my hands in my jacket pockets and Dylan had his hood up, cheeks pink from the cold. He looked over at me and smiled. Not a nervous smile, just easy, comfortable. And then, just like that, he reached out and took my hand. No warning, no looking around. Just grabbed it and kept walking. I glanced at him, eyebrows raised. Bold move. He shrugged. Felt right. And that's when I realized it didn't matter what label he picked, or how long it took for him to figure out what any of this meant. What mattered was that he was showing up. Every day. In the ways that counted. Later that night, Curled up on the couch, he rested his head on my shoulder and said quietly, "This still freaks me out a little." I kissed the top of his head. "That's okay." He tilted his face toward me, eyes tired but warm. "Thanks for being patient," I smiled. "Thanks for being brave." He didn't respond right away, just nestled closer. And after a while, he whispered, "I don't want to sleep alone again." "You won't," I said, pulling the blanket over us. "You never have to." And I meant it. Because from that night on, it was no longer about the storm, or the bed, or the silence in the middle of the night. It was about us. Whatever we were. And whatever we were becoming.